Functions are nothing but the group of statements that works together to solve particular problem. What is library function? Here library functions are predefined function which is already built and kept inside the library function or header file. Here user defined programs are nothing but the complete program and it is independent program. Hello to all, a warm welcome to my new session on function. I'm Revati, faculty, Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram, Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. In my today's session, I'm going to deal with new chapter and the chapter name is functions. And the total marks we can expect under this chapter is 2. That means we can able to attend only 2 marks 1 question and the weightage of this chapter is only 2 marks. And in this chapter, I'm going to deal with the following topics. That means at the beginning, I'm going to deal with introduction about function. Then I'm going to deal with the types of function, that is nothing but library function as well as user-defined function. Along with that, I'm going to deal with different header files. So, dear student, these are the certain topics I'm going to deal in my today's session. Now, directly moving on to the today's topic, that is introduction about function. So, what is function? What is the need of function? And what are the different types of function? So, to explain this concept, let me to take one simple example that in my class there are 60 students. So, in my class, how many students? It is 60 students. Now, think the situation that we got the opportunity to organize college day. To organize college day, what I'm going to do, I'm going to divide this number of students into 3 different groups. Each group can have only 20 members. Think that this is my group 1, this is my group 2, and this is my group 3. And I'm going to assign some activity. That means this group 1 can able to organize sports. This group 2 can able to organize cultural activity. Then this group is allotted for food committee. Dear student, I repeat once again that in my class there are 60 students and we got the chance to conduct or organize college day. To organize college day properly, what I'm going to do? I'm going to divide this total number into 3 different groups. Each group can have 20 members. And what's the responsibility of each group here is? Group 1 is responsible for sports. Group 2 is responsible for cultural activity. And group 3 is responsible for food committee. Now, each groups are responsible for performing specific task. Now think another situation that if I tell all the 60 members to concentrate on sports as well as cultural activity as well as food committee, is it possible to organize the college day properly? No, because there is no work transparency and all the things are clumsy. And it's very difficult to manage all 60 members together. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to divide this 60 members into 3 different groups and I'm going to allocate individual tasks for each group and I'm going to manage these groups. Then what's the advantage here? There is work transparency and all the tasks are carried out effectively. There is no confusion. This is the advantage of grouping. So what is function here? Here functions are nothing but a set of statements together works to perform specific task. I repeat, what is function here? It's nothing but a group of statements and all the statements work together to perform specific task. So here a function is named group of statement. So what is group of statement? It is nothing but n number of statement in my program developed to solve a sub-program. So here if I consider this example, think that this 2020 members are called group of statement and it is called sub-program or sub-group and returns a value to other functions when it is called. If I consider this example, who is responsible for handling all three groups? That is nothing but the class teacher. Similarly, if I consider function, here functions are nothing but the group of statement that works together to solve particular problem. And how I am going to manage these functions? That is with the help of function name. If the programs are complex and lengthy, they can modularized. What is the characteristics of C++ programming language here? That is modularization. So what is modularization? That is nothing but grouping the programs into smaller tasks. So here think that here we got the chance to organize college day. So it is complex task. In order to manage this complex task easily, what I'm going to do? I'm going to divide the students into different subgroups or subprograms. So dividing these groups into subprograms or submodule itself called modularization. So what is module here? Modules are nothing but the subprograms or sub-function. So modularized into subprograms, the subprograms are called function. So each subprograms are called function. That means each groups are called function. And how all these groups are managed? All the groups are managed by the class teacher. Now, there are two types of functions. So what is function here? It is nothing but the group of statement together performs some task and the functions are classified into two types, that is library function and user defined function. So what are the two types of function here? That is library function as well as user defined function. So dear student, what is library function? Here library functions are predefined function which is already built and kept inside the library function or header files. So a standard library is a collection of predefined function. As I told, a standard library is a collection of predefined functions. So what is the meaning of predefined? It's already built and which is kept inside the library function or which is stored inside the header file and other programming elements which are accessed through header files. So here a standard library is a predefined function along with some programming element, and where all these predefined files as well as programming elements are stored, that is inside the header file. And header files are the file. So what is header file? It's also example for files which contains standard functions. For example, if I consider C program, in C program I'm going to have scanf and printf statement. So these two are the library functions and which is stored inside the stdio.h header file. If I consider C++ programming language, cin and cout are the standard functions, and where these cin and cout are stored in our header file called iostream.h. The header files should be written angled bracket. That means if I want to use any standard library in my program, then I want to include the header files in my program. And how I'm going to include? With the help of hash include directive. That means first I need to write hash include, and I'm going to use the angled bracket. Inside the angled bracket, I'm going to write the header files. For example, if I write hash include iostream.h, then it allows the user to use cin and cout function in their program. And if I write hash include conio.h header file, then user can able to use console input and output operations in the program. This is the way we can able to use library function. So what is library function? Here library functions are predefined functions along with their programming element. And how can I access those standard library functions? That is nothing but by using header files. This is the way I can able to use the library functions in my program. Moving further, I'm going to have the second type of function. So what's the second type? It is user-defined function. Think that I'm the user and I'm going to write my own program as called user-defined function. Now, consider the simple example that I want to create a basic calculator with the options like addition, subtraction, division, then product and modulus. Think that it's a complex problem. To make it simple, what I'm going to do, I'm going to divide this complex problem into 5 different modules. So here one module is capable to perform addition operation, another module is capable to perform subtraction operation, and another module is capable to perform division, and another module is capable to perform multiplication, and another module is capable to perform modulus operation. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to write my own subprograms. It is also called user-defined function. That means I'm the user and I'm going to write the code for individual module, and it is called user-defined function. That means we can create our own functions or subprogram. That means C++ programming language allows the user to create their own subprogram or functions, and it is normally referred as user-defined function. So why it is called user-defined function? Because the user is responsible for writing the code or program, and it is called user-defined function. So a user-defined function is a complete and independent program. Here user-defined programs are nothing but the complete program, and it is independent program. That means it's not going to depend on some other subprogram. So here user-defined function is a complete and independent program and which can be invoked in the main program. So here all the 5 modules are independent modules as well as complete modules, and if I want to invoke these modules or subprograms in my program, where I'm going to invoke, that is in my main program. So inside my main program, I'm going to call all these subprogram names. The user-defined functions are written to perform definite calculation. So here user-defined functions are used by the user to perform definite calculation. After performing their task, they sends back the result. The user-defined functions are used to perform some certain calculation. After performing the calculation, the function must return the value that is back to the calling program or subprogram. So after performing all the operation as well as calculation, the subprogram must return the value back. This is the way we can able to use user-defined function. That means user is going to write their own function as called user-defined function, and where I'm going to call this function, that is in my main program. Now the different header files which is supported by C++ programming language. In that, first I'm going to have iostream.h. So what is h here? That is nothing but the header file. So the first header file I required here is iostream.h. That means to perform all the input as well as output function, I required iostream.h header files. That means it is going to include, or it is going to perform all input and output routines. That means if I want to read any data from the keyboard, I required iostream.h. If I want to display any data to the user, once again I required iostream.h header file. The most commonly supported functions are here open. Suppose opening file or opening program, closing file, get the content or get the line. That means if I want to get particular line, I'm going to use get line function. To read the file content, I'm having read function. To write the content to other file, I'm having write. To read, once again get. To write, put. Then seek G, seek P, tell G, tell P, end of file, etc. These are the some of the functions which is supported by the iostream.h header file. That means if I want to read, write, or I want to get the end of file, in that time I'm going to use iostream.h header file in my program. So these are the functions which is supported by the iostream.h. That means if I want to read any content or write any content to the file, or if I want to get the end of the line, in that situation I'm going to use iostream.h header file in my program. Along with that, I'm going to have stdio.h. So what is stdio.h? It's nothing but the standard input and output. So this header files contains functions and macros. So this stdio.h header file includes some of the predefined functions, along with that macros to perform standard input operation as well as output operation. And when I include iostream.h, it is going to call or it's going to include stdio.h. So what is stream here? Here streams are nothing but the sequence of bytes or sequence of characters. And what's IO stream? That means I want to read or write sequence of character or sequence of bytes. And when we include the header file iostream.h, the header file stdio.h is automatically included. So here, if I consider C program, directly I am going to include stdio.h. But if I am going to consider C++ programming language, I am going to include the header file iostream.h. And when I include iostream.h header file, automatically it's going to include stdio.h, because C++ programming language includes all the features of C. So what's the feature of C? That is stdio.h. That means C supports stdio.h header file. And in my C++ program, if I include iostream.h header file directly and automatically it's going to include stdio.h header file. So what are the functions which is supported by stdio.h? So what is STD? That's nothing but standard input and output header file. It supports fopen. That's nothing but file open. That means opening a file connection, closing file connection, printf statement, scanf statement, fprintf, that is file printf, file scanf, freed, fwrite. These are the functions which is supported by the stdio.h. Moving further, I'm going to have the string h. That is string.h. So what is string? Here strings are nothing but the sequence of character or array of character. This header file declares function to manipulate string. Okay. If I want to manipulate and if I want to perform any string operations, in that time I'm going to include string.h header file in my program, and it's also responsible for performing memory manipulation routines. In that, string length, string concatenate, string copy, string reverse, string uppercase, string lowercase, etc. And the functions contained in the header file string.h are listed below. So what is the meaning here? These are the certain functions which is supported by the string.h. That means if I want to get the length of the string, in that time I can able to use the built-in function called string length. And if I want to club two string together, that is nothing but the string concatenation. So concatenate means what? Combining two strings together. And what is string copy? That means I want to copy the content of one string to another string. In that time I'm going to use string copy. And what is string reverse? That means I want to reverse the given string. Suppose if I want to reverse the given string, in that time I'm going to use string reverse. Then what is string uppercase? That means whatever the string I'm going to have and I want to convert that into uppercase, then I'm going to use string uppercase. Then what is string lowercase? Whatever the string I'm having, I want to convert that string to lowercase. In that time, I'm going to have string lowercase. And these are the functions which is supported by the string.h. And all these functions are related to the string. Then moving further, I'm going to have standard library.h. There are certain time I want to include the library functions like malloc, calloc, realloc. So what is malloc, what is calloc, and what is realloc here? That's nothing but the dynamic memory allocation. So dear student, till now what we discussed, all the things comes under static memory allocation. For example, if I write int a or b of 5, etc. These are the example for static memory allocation. That means at the beginning of the program itself, I'm going to allocate the memory. Then what is dynamic memory allocation? During the execution of the time, that means during the execution of the program, we are going to allocate the memory, and those all are called dynamic memory. Example, malloc, calloc, and realloc. Along with that, we are having free function. So what is free? That is deallocating the memory location which is allocated. And what is a to I? That is alphabet to integer, a to L, alphabet to log, a to F, it is alphabet to floating point. So this header file is used to declare conversion routine. What is the need of std library, that is standard library.h, in order to declare conversion routine? So what is conversion? I want to convert one data type to another. For example, think that alphabet to I, that means, for example, if I write capital letter A, this is the alphabet. Now I want to get the integer. That is the integer conversion. That is alphabet to integer conversion, alphabet to long conversion, as well as alphabet to floating point conversion. Along with that, it's also responsible for performing searching, sort routines, and other malicious things. Along with that, it's also responsible for allocating the memory and deallocating the memory. And these functions are example for dynamic memory allocation. All these functions are example for dynamic memory allocation, and whatever the memory still now we were allocating, all these things comes under static memory allocation. Moving further, I'm going to have IO manip.h. So what is IO manip.h? That is nothing but it's used to perform input-output manipulation. So it is mainly used to perform input and output manipulation. This header file contains functions. So this input-output manipulation function contains functions and macros. So what are the things this header file includes? That is functions, along with that macros. For input-output manipulation, that is nothing but the input-output manipulation means what? How to read the data and how to display the data. For creating parameterized manipulations, so here it's mainly used to perform input-output manipulation. It includes functions as well as macros. And what are the functions supported by the IO manip.h? That is end L. So what is the need of end L? That means if I want to print the output in the next line, I can able to use end L. Then what is set W? Set the width. That means if I want to set the width between two words or two input, in that time I'm going to use set W. And what is set file? It's mainly used to set the file. Suppose if I want to set the precision, once again I'm going to have set precision function, hexadecimal function, octadecimal function, etc. These are the functions provided by iomanip.h. Then I'm going to have the math.h. Now tell me, dear student, why I required math.h? Because to perform all the mathematical related operations, I required math.h. This header file declares prototype for the mathematical functions and error handling. So here math.h header file includes all the functions which is related to mathematics along with that error handling. And the functions that are used to perform mathematical calculation and conversions are listed below. For example, if I want to find the power of a given number, instead of writing power function, I can able to use built-in function which is stored under this math.h header file. And if I want to find the square root of a given number, instead of writing whole code, I can able to use square root function. If I want to perform sine operation or cosine operation or tan, then I can able to use sine function, cosine function, tan function. And if I want to convert absolute value, I can have abs function. These are the certain functions which is stored under math.h. So dear student, in my today's session, we studied some of the different header files. So these header files are also called library function, and this is the example for library function. And what are the header files we discussed in my today's session? That is iostream.h, along with that stdio.h, along with that string.h, manip.h, conio.h. These are the certain header files I discussed in my today's session. So what are the header files I discussed in my today's session? That is iostream.h, stdio.h, string.h, along with that math.h. These are the certain header files I discussed in my today's session. I hope, dear student, you got more information about library functions. Dear students, let's meet in the next session with some more information about library function. Until then, keep watching and keep learning. Thank you.